Thank you, Katrina, and welcome everyone. As Katrina says, we did this seminar yesterday and it was quite dynamic and I think very useful for local authorities, PPN workers and people working at that community level, regional level in the Southeast. So it's great to see so many of you here. We're going to be here for an hour and a half. It will be dynamic in the sense of we'll hear a number of voices and be invited to share insights or reflections in the chat, which we'll be bringing in to a report for the 3 seminars, which we'll make available to you all. So hopefully you can see the chat on your bottom toolbar of your Zoom. There should be chat. If it's not visible, if you see more, and you can see the chat. And that allows us to, if we're having any problems, concerns, or questions, we can put them there. But I'll be inviting in different points of this seminar, your insights or reflections or your own experience. Okay, I'm going to share my screen just to allow us to go through the agenda. Can you see my screen or?
Not yet, Davey.
Okay, sorry, yeah. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see my screen now and the slides that I don't want to show you right now. Okay. We're okay, we can see my screen for the people that are here. Okay, so we, as Katrina says, we've been doing these seminars to look at building resilient communities, especially in the moment we find ourselves now, and how the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda could be a really interesting framework to map our recovery and our transition, a just recovery and a just transition. So that's our objective today. This is the flow of the session. So I'm just going to give you a bit more context, and then we're going to invite Fiona Donovan from Healthy Ireland that will give us some insights into well-being and the Sustainable Development Goals. We're just going to hear some short inputs from the department levels, the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Energy, and the Department of Community and Rural Affairs. We'll hear just some contributions there, very short, and then 3 short insights from the field, from people that are working at the local, regional level through the PPNs and their local authorities. So we'll have stories from Wicklow, Wexford and Carlow, and I'll be inviting you in to share some things that are working well or ways you've been using the Sustainable Development Goals in the work you're doing. We'll have a breakout room where we'll be going into smaller groups to have just a short conversation where we might identify a collective action that could be taken at the county or local development to assure the SDG framework, the Sustainable Development Goal framework, is at the heart of our recovery. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll come back to a plenary after that, share some insights together, look at some next steps, and then close at exactly 4 o'clock. So that's where we're going today. Just to give you a bit of sense of who I am, Davy Phillip, I work with the Sustainable Ireland Cooperative, Cultivate, we call ourselves. We've been working for 20 years as a NGO civil society organization, really looking to accelerate the transition to low carbon and resilient society. So we offer training, communications, and a lot of my work now is in the design and facilitation of events, physical, virtual, and blended events. And it's interesting, the work I'm doing in Tipperary. So we're rooted in the CLOUGHJORDAN ECOVILLAGE project in Tipperary, which is a rich ecosystem of innovation with maybe 10 or 15 learning providers and different companies researching or contributing to sustainable community inside a living community of now 150 residents, with more people in the local area engaged in the farm and the enterprise center here. So we really frame our work in the Sustainable Development Goals and see the opportunity, I think, to localize these goals and potentially to work at sort of partnership and collaboration in and with other sectors. As well as working at the local level, I work at the European level. I currently sit on the council. I'm the president of ECOVILLAGE, which is a meta-network of national initiatives for community and local development, community-led and local development. So it includes networks like transition town networks or eco-village networks or social enterprise networks or community energy networks. So we've 46 members now in 18 countries, and really we're pioneering new approaches for real community-led, cooperative, bottom-up action on climate and sustainability. So we have now 8 staff distributed across Europe, and we, with partners in Lisbon, are really looking at indicators for local level SDG work. So that just gives you a sense of who I am. As I say, most of my work now is facilitating and working with groups. I'm just going to finish my piece with just reflecting on the Sustainable Development Goals from a more holistic perspective. When we see the 17 goals in our block, and we can see many of the things where areas and domains we're working in, but when we see it laid out in this diagram from the Stockholm Resilience Center, we really get a sense of the nested systems. We have a biosphere we have to protect, which is, as we all know, under threat in many different ways, and we've crossed many thresholds that are dangerous to cross around pollution and climate and resource use. And we have to have that healthy environment. We have 4 big goals for that biosphere level. Nested within the biosphere is the social systems. And we have 8 goals around social justice, equality, work, livelihoods, healthier communities. So there are 8 goals there in society. And then nested within society is the economy, looking at equitable fair share and a way to distribute and engage local enterprise. And there's 4 goals there. And the reason I love giving this example is, as someone that's worked in this field for 20 years, whenever I mention sustainability, people think I'm talking about environment, not social justice or jobs and livelihoods or circular economies or health and well-being. And so we miss the opportunity to see these things as a whole. And goal 17, I think, is so important in starting to weave together these different goals at different levels in different regions and in different sectors. So I think today we're exploring at the regional level how we as PPNs, local authorities, and community workers can really frame the work we're doing, and now we'll be doing in the recovery, how that work can be seen through the framework of the 2030 agenda. So that's what we're diving into today. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen if I can. Okay, so that context taken, and this is what we're doing. Let's just drop into Fiona Donovan, who gives an overview around healthy communities, well-being, and the Sustainable Development Goals. So Fiona will be speaking for just over 10 minutes. I invite any questions or insights. I'm not saying that we're going to be able to address them now, but we can capture them and bring them into reports, especially insights from Fiona's presentation. So it's all yours, Fiona.
Hi, thanks, Davy, and thanks for everyone joining today. It's great to have so many people on. So my name is Fiona Donovan. I'm working the HSE and I'm project lead for the Healthy Ireland, Healthy Cities and Counties. So as Davy said, really looking at the SDGs and health, and I suppose just when we think of health, it's mainly, and it comes into the broader perspective, what Davy was saying, it's about education, it's about employment, it's about services, it's about access to good housing, it's about access to good local food, sports clubs. Built environment is really important, and we can see that now with the 2 kilometres and 5 kilometres what's around us. Access to green and blue spaces is really important. And community in terms of the social fabric and social capital, tidy towns, scouting groups, all that kind of thing. And that is what makes health. All of these things are really important, and that's a really fundamental part of what we're talking about today. And from that broader perspective, Health 2020 was from the European policy. And just a bit of context, Healthy Ireland, hopefully many people might know about it or not, but it's a cross-governmental framework for health and well-being. So I suppose from the framework come many policies, and you can take any department and just focus on health, but there's a policy document for alcohol reduction, tobacco, sexual health, promoting a healthy weight, and physical activity. So I suppose we all know there's national policies, and sometimes that's the easy bit, but most of those national policy turns into plans, and really what we need and to implement it and to get in that space is community action. And that's really, really important. And from the Healthy Cities and Counties, the aim is to support cities and counties to implement Healthy Ireland at the local level through LCDCs. So like Healthy Kildare, and my colleague Annette is on from Healthy Wexford. And there's 19 members at the moment. And really that's just a bit of background. But I suppose a key point from today to look at, we're in a busy space. We're not the only network, and David listed out how many there in terms of sustainability networks. There's age-friendly, sustainable cities, smart cities, open cities, green cities, tidy towns, all these different networks. And that is actually the hard part, is actually trying to connect all of them. And often, we get, these networks, and also we develop plans, and we do bring people together and we take a broad perspective. So we get different people together. So for example, we have the PPN, we have the guards, we have the HSE, we have local authority. That's great. And we come up with a plan. And so we have a chapter on health, we have a chapter on economics, we have a chapter on tourism, I have a chapter on sustainability. And this is our plan, and it's all nice and organized. And that is how the world is not. And this is fundamental. The world is grey and messy. There's complex issues, and we need complex solutions for complex problems. That doesn't mean that they're hard. It means that they're integrated and everything like that. But grey and messy is quite hard there. It takes a different type of thinking, creativity, critical thinking to look at that. And I suppose this is where last January, a year and a half ago, that global challenges are interlinked, but our response is fragmented. You could also say national challenges are interlinked, but our response is fragmented. Local challenges are interlinked, and our response is fragmented. And I suppose this is where we need to take those pieces and put them together in a little bit differently. And I suppose the key message today is that the Sustainable Development Goals are the framework, can be the structure, the framework, the scaffolding on which to do that, to connect those pieces, to look at a broader sense. It has a different, it connects across the language, it connects across all the different areas. And this is health in terms of, you could put anyone in the middle, but I suppose in terms of, if you look at it, good health, well-being, quality of life is actually probably the ultimate aim of all of this. So just to put it there. But so the world is grey and messy, everything's interconnected. We can see how things are very interconnected. However, I'll just put a health warning here. Our system isn't set up like this. We have 17 different departments. Everything's quite linear, and I'm sure you're well used to this. Everything has to report it back into one box. So the system doesn't encourage this, but that doesn't mean we can't try and change that. And I think there is an openness and a need and a want, and I think a realization that we have to do things differently. So I suppose to take the Sustainable Development Goals and to look at them as buckets. Okay, so this is a key thing where you take what's already in your county and you look at the different areas and you fill them up. So it's a structure through which you can use them. So I'll take the health bucket for an example, just to show you how this can be done. So looking at health, you can take all the policies and plans that you need to do, and there's I don't know, 20 or 30, 40, 50 plans in every county with thousands of actions. So from health and well-being, from physical activity, we took Offaly and looked across all these plans. There was 434 actions to do with physical activity, 369 to do with mental health, 68 to do with healthy food, gardening, all that kind of thing, 54 to do with alcohol reduction and tobacco free, 45 to do with sexual health. That gives you over 900 actions already existing in Offaly, which has a population of, someone from Offaly can give that to me. So they're already there. So I suppose in terms of resources, energy, everything like that, the advice and the learning, and I'd welcome feedback on this or what you think, is to use the Sustainable Development Goals, but to look at the 70-20-10 rule. So really what we need to do is 70% should be strengthening what's already there. What community groups are there? Who's already driving things? There's a lot of energy. Sometimes we look at money, but there's a lot of people's time, energy, expertise. So 70% of everything we should do should strengthen it. 20% should connect it. So we should be looking at connecting things. And I suppose on that, I'll do a shout out in terms of there's connections with the PPN, but it'd be great to see more connections with Healthy Ireland, Healthy Cities and Counties, and the PPNs across that in terms of your health and wellbeing statement. And it's the interconnections where things happen. And 10% should be new. So often what happens is new funding comes, we start with a blank sheet and we come up with new things, and there's 90% of things that have to be done. So that really, like the Sustainable Development Goals, I think are, they're more than just, the labels and the actions. They can actually, I think, fundamentally provide the structure for the new LECP, where and fundamentally the whole approach and the difference, it could actually drive a completely different way of putting things together and really focusing on implementation. So appreciate your comments, and thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. It's quite hard in these environments. You don't hear applause or any appreciation, but I'm sure there's lots out there. In virtual, we sometimes use this, jazz hands. It can look a bit funny, but I think in virtual, or you can see some reactions on your thing. So you can clap hands like that on your bottom toolbar, as Annette's showing there, or so that's quite good for a speaker or for each other to see, hey, we're alive. Thanks for that, Fiona. We're going to hear, I'm inviting you to put any reflections or insights or things that resonated with you in the chat. We can bring that into the report. But now we're going to hear two short pieces from two departments. So first of all, we'll have Anthony O'Grady, who is working at the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Energy, and is in the department that is focused and responsible for the Sustainable Development Goals in Ireland. So Anthony will just give us a bit of context from the department level, and then we'll hear from Deirdre from the Department of Rural and Community Affairs. So Anthony, over to you.
Thanks, Davy, and thanks everyone for being here today. It's the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment, Davy, just over. But I'm going to give just a brief overview of what we're doing here in the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment with regards to the Sustainable Development Goals. My role here is the national implementation of the SDGs and our whole of government approach to the same. So, I mean, to give a bit of background to what the Sustainable Development Goals are, they were agreed in 2015 at the United Nations. They're a follow-on to the Millennium Development Goals, which were agreed in 2000, and the 2015 goals, it's the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, of which the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are the core of that agenda. In response to the agreement of the Sustainable Development Goals, we in Ireland, we drafted our first national implementation plan in 2018. The plan is a whole of government plan. It was designed by an interdepartmental working group, so all of the different departments had input into the implementation plan. Within the national implementation plan, each department was given their role as a lead department within the Sustainable Development Goal that they were dealing with. The interdepartmental working group oversees the work of the national implementation plan, and therefore we approach the thing as a whole government approach. So what have we done thus far? Well, first, we identified in the national implementation plan that we would need stakeholder engagement in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, because the SDGs as much as I'd love to say it could be achieved by government, it will need to be a whole of society approach to achieve the SDGs. They're just too big and too broad. We set up a stakeholder forum to bring everyone into the room to discuss the Sustainable Development Goals. Basically, the stakeholder forum is designed to get input from all different actors within the arena of sustainable development. So that brings academia, business, local authorities, government officials. And the idea is that we leave no one behind, because at the core of the Sustainable Development Goals is the idea that we leave no one behind. So to have a stakeholder forum where everyone has an input, it's something that isn't done often, and it's trying to take people out of the silos that we currently work in. And the Sustainable Development Goals, as mentioned by Fiona, it's a framework to create a better world. And our idea is that having everyone in the room, we'll get to see everyone's viewpoints, and hopefully we'll be able to take those into the designing of policies going forward. We produced our first voluntary national review also in 2018, which is like a school report which we presented to the United Nations. It identified a few of the areas in which we were doing well, but it also identified a few of the areas which we were doing very poorly. And as a direct response to the 2018 voluntary national review, we now have a pretty comprehensive climate action plan. There were a couple of other things that were the voluntary national review where we're doing poorly. One of them being housing and homelessness, and I mean the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government is currently working on alleviating that problem. Another thing that we have done within the Department of Communications to try and bring the SDGs to the forefront of people's minds was we selected SDG champions in 2019. In February, we asked for expressions of interest for companies and businesses and civil society organizations to become SDG champions. And we got 76 expressions of interest, which was surprised us. But each one of those 76 organizations would have been a great Sustainable Development Goal champion. But we decided that we would go with 12 champions who had a large national profile. The champions, as outlined, are on post, Bord Ishkawara, Carroll County Council, Eco UNESCO, the GAA, ICTU, Men's Sheds, Musgraves, the National Women's Council of Ireland, the Union of Students in Ireland, Smart Farming and Vodafone. And as you can see by those 12 organisations, it's a very wide-ranging group of organisations which cover the length and breadth of our current country. The idea with the national champions is that they will raise the awareness of the SDGs, which is one of the things that we identified in the national implementation as lacking among the general population. We've worked closely with Carroll County Council this year. One of the things about the Sustainable Development Goals, I guess, is that it is an agreed policy within the United Nations. So the language and the I suppose the written policy can be quite complex and convoluted and can be quite highbrow. And what we've worked with Carroll County Council on doing is identifying how the Sustainable Development Goals can be linked locally. One of the things we've worked on and completed is actually how the SDGs link to the Tidy Towns competition. And I'm sure Jeanette from Carlow will be willing to share that with everyone if that's of interest. But it's one of the things that we've identified we're trying to do is how do you bring the SDGs to a local level so that they can relate to people at the PPN level, at local authority level, because at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the work is going to be done on the ground. For 2020, I suppose, moving on, the current COVID situation and the lack of a government has kind of left us in limbo. We had a plan to put out the 2021-2023 National Implementation Plan at the end of this year, but that's sort of still in limbo at the moment. With our stakeholder engagement was one of the key pieces for writing that policy, and without our stakeholder forum this year, it's kind of difficult to see how we're going to have the engagement that we would like to have in order to put out the best plan that we can possibly do. Now, it could mean a delay of the plan, but we're unsure at the moment, because at the end of the day, the National Implementation Plan will have to be agreed at a government level as well before we can start the process. I think, Davy, that's pretty much
Brilliant, Anthony. Thank you so much for that contribution. And we're just to follow on that, we're going to hear now from Deirdre Kelly from the Department of Rural and Community Affairs with their perspective on SDGs. So Deirdre, the floor is yours.
Hi everybody. First of all, thanks a million for having me here. And one of my colleagues is also here, Michelle. She's in the mix somewhere. So listen, I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to share my screen just so that you can have in front of you what I'm talking about, but it'll be very brief, and we can talk about it in the breakout session. So basically, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Sustainable, Inclusive and Empowered Communities. So it's the strategy that was published late last year. It delivers or envisages a roadmap for strengthening and developing the state's relationship with the community and voluntary sector. And it covers a lot of different areas, from communications to participation, from climate action to public sector duty. But there is one, yeah, and it's not working for me again today. Yeah, there we go. There is one objective specifically about the Sustainable Development Goals. So basically, we're going to be working with TK, and we've already engaged fairly substantially with Anthony and Joe on this to try and come up with ways that we can build the awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals at a local level, supporting the capacity of communities and supporting the capacity of individuals. And one example of what we've done in that regard is we had a climate action workshop at the LCDC network event in November, which was basically looking at ways in which individuals and extrapolating then onto communities can make a contribution towards various different elements of climate action. So that was one of the actions that we did, but there's plans on foot for a lot more. But unfortunately, as Anthony alluded to, the COVID thing has kind of thrown everybody out a little bit. But I mean, we haven't been thrown off course altogether, just off a little bit. Then, as I mentioned previously, there's a specific objective as well on climate action, which is an element of the SDGs. And outside of Objective 8, which specifically focuses on the SDGs, really, as I said yesterday at the session, all of the actions relate in some way to the SDGs. So the SDGs are relevant for all of the actions in this particular strategy. So I'm just picking out a few that are particularly relevant. So Objective 11 would be one of them. And then I had looked at two others. One was Objective 3, and that's about developing and strengthening process and mechanisms about to ensure better consultation, inclusion and participation in decision-making structures. And I picked 3 of the goals that are relevant there. So reduced inequalities, number 10, peace, justice and strong institutions, number 16, and the one that everybody feels is one of the most important for all of the others, to underpin all of the others, is the partnership for goals. And then I wanted to note Objective 6 as well, because Objective 6 is about strengthening and building the understanding and capacity on public sector duty, which is about building public sector organisations' capacity to deal with their the people they deal with within a human rights framework. So it really speaks, all of these objectives speak to at least one, if not more than one, and even not the goals themselves, it speaks to the ethos of the goals and the ethos of what we're all trying to do here. And the second piece that I wanted to mention as well was that I'm also over this section. I work in the section, we deal with the strategy, but the other side of the house, we also deal with strategic oversight responsibility for LCDCs and for the LECP planning process. So we also aspire to bring the SDGs front and center for the next round of LECP planning. And as was alluded to and specifically mentioned in the session yesterday, that's coming at us at a very rapid pace now, and we're already having internal discussions here and linking up with housing to come up with guidelines that will facilitate this. And also we're also thinking internally in the department that we may need to have serious conversations with local government around the LECP, because we're in such a different environment now than we were the last time we did LECPs. So that conversation, those conversations are being had, and they obviously will involve a consultation process as well. How we go about that, etc., is you know, all up in the air at the moment. But I don't want anyone to think that we don't recognise that we have to have these conversations, and that we aren't trying to figure out exactly how we go about having these conversations. So I'll leave it at that, and if anybody has any questions or comments or whatever. Thanks a million.
Sorry, getting used to the technology there. Thank you so much for that. And I think that set a nice context for where we're going now, where we're looking at some insights from the field, if you like. So we're going to have 3 more voices, and I invite you to, as we're hearing these different examples of how PPNs and local authorities have worked with the SDGs, or promoted the goals, or used the framework in some ways to make sense or progress the work. I think put any examples in the chat as well, and we'll try and harvest them into the report. So I'll just share that in the chat now. So I'm just sharing an invitation to share any actions and projects from your own regions as we move in to these insights from the field, we're calling them. So we're going to have 3. They're all from the Southeast. We'll start with Helen Hose, the PPN coordinator in Wicklow. Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Davy. Hi, everyone. Davy said I'm Helen Howes. I'm the resource worker with County Wicklow PPN, and I'm delighted to be here today to share just a couple of examples of what we've been doing to highlight and promote understanding of the SDGs. So back in 2018, County Wicklow PPN undertook 11 workshops, 5 online consultations, and we took on board 2 submissions to develop our vision for community wellbeing statements for our 5 municipal districts and our county as a whole. Using the statements and the data we collected then was just a perfect opportunity for us then to feed all that into PPN submissions to local and national policy, which we started doing in early 2019. Pretty quickly then after that, what we tried to do then was link the wellbeing statements to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we published them all in a booklet. And from then on, any submission we did thereafter included reference to our wellbeing statements and the SDGs. So that's ongoing. More recently now, we were working with, or are working with, I should say, the Environmental Officer in Wicklow County Council and the IEN and the Waters and Communities Office. We started off working together to organise an event which had to be cancelled like many other events this year. But in the conversations we had for the event, we came up with the idea that what we would really love to do would be to do some kind of SDG mapping thing here in Wicklow, and there was 3 reasons for that. One, of course, to highlight that the goals and promote understanding, but 2, show what local groups are doing to achieve them. So that's kind of like filling Fiona's pockets that she was talking about earlier. And then also the main one, for me anyway, would be to give hope to people and groups, because there's so many issues and problems in the world, and saving the world can seem very overwhelming, and just by breaking it down like that, and bringing it closer to home, it makes it more meaningful and hopefully more hopeful, and it kind of talks to the stuff that Anthony was speaking about Now, we're still in early conversations with this, but we've looked at various apps. We're kind of trying to figure out how we run the databases. So if anybody out there, and there's how many people here today? 79 people here today. If any of you have any experience of doing something like that, we'd love to hear from you, because it's something we would really like to progress. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. Just from one of the SDG stakeholder forums, we did get presentations from the Central Statistics Office and GeoHive, who are doing a lot of sort of mapping and indicators for SDGs. But if anyone else has any insights for Helen or other examples from actions in your place, that would be great to have. So next we move to Wexford, and we're going to have Annette Dupy from Healthy Wexford, previously the PPN coordinator, and to share some insights from that county.
Hello everybody. So I've 5 small things that we would have done as a county, which would have promoted awareness, understanding, and I suppose the push on sustainable development goals. So firstly, when I was at the PPN, we would have run a campaign on the daily actions through our Facebook page. So we would have posted each day a daily action that you could complete that would help to progress the sustainable development goals. So for example, it might have been something like goal 4, quality education, volunteering to teach English to migrants within your community, and just simple things that people could do that would aim to progress the goals. We then also use that as a weekly summary, which was then part of our information bulletin out to our members as well, so they could post it on notice boards, all that type of thing. So it would be increasing the awareness of the daily goals and the daily actions on that. We do have to thank the department for the idea around that. There was originally a booklet that had 164 daily actions. We tweaked some from that, and they later came out then with a short leaflet as well that has 50 daily actions. So we stole their idea and used it locally, which always works well. The second thing we did was each of our secretariat members and our PPN representatives, we purchased the SDG pins for them, and Davy has one on there. So just that we could highlight that we were, as a PPN, supporting the SDGs, and we had passed out in one of our plenaries that we were a PPN that supported the SDGs. It was a conversation starter for a lot of people, particularly when they went to the local authority, because there wasn't a presence of the SDGs within the local authority, and it started kind of the conversation there. And then suddenly as well, a lot of the councillors starting to have the pins as well. So it promoted that a little bit on it. The third thing that we did was we, on providing our representatives with some sustainable development goals information that was a bit tailored towards local government. So we used 2 key documents here, the UCLG, which is the United Cities and Local Government, which is the sustainable development goals, what local governments need to know, which kind of focuses on looking at the local authority areas and how goals fit into that. And the second document was Social Justice Ireland's policy document as well, around policy push areas for sustainable development goals. So they were 2 things that when we conducted training for our representatives, we kind of armed them with the 2 of those so they could identify where to push for different goals. The fourth element that we undertook was around workshops on sustainable development goals. So Katrina, Davy and Stephanie, I think there as well, would have been involved in conducting those within Wexford. We would have opened them up to local authority staff, councillors and our PPN members as well. So it got the conversation going. As well, it did tend to be kind of within the local authority. We got people from environment, but we didn't necessarily get people from other sections. So again, that sense of pushing sustainable development goals as being fully rounded, something that still needs a little bit of push on. And the fifth thing we did, similar to what Helen had done on the vision statement, we did our vision statement last year. And so this is created from the bottom up. And so we created this from the bottom up and we created our vision statement. But then to future-proof it, we overlaid it with the Sustainable Development Goals. So the vision statement currently has a map which highlights for all of our vision statement elements which goals of the Sustainable Development Goals achieving that vision would achieve on it. So again, we had, even in draft stage, we used that in a number of submissions. And again, we're driving home about sustainable development goals and the need for that. So very much I feel that, and the work that we've done is pushing it from a bottom-up perspective. The department is pushing it from a bottom or from a top-down, and hopefully somewhere in the middle we'll get a bit more recognition of sustainable development goals as well. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Annette. That was perfect. Some really interesting insights there. I'm just going, before our next speakers from Carlo, just if you look at the chat, there is some interesting other projects and other approaches, and even some resources being shared. Anything that's shared in the chat, we'll bring into the report if it's relevant. But right now, we're really looking for actions that you've taken at your local level, especially ones that bring different groupings and sectors, or like PPNs and local authorities together, but really anything that's framed or helps promote the Sustainable Development Goals. We'd love to see more examples. There's some great examples in the chat already. So another short insight then from the field is from Carlo, and we have Jeanette O'Brien from Carlo County Council and Molly Aylesbury, who's on the Secretariat of the PPN, to give us a story of what they've done. So over to you, Molly and Jeanette.
Perfect. I'm just going to remind Jeanette that she has to unmute herself today. That's perfect. So yeah, I'm Molly. I'm on the Secretariat for Carlo PPN, and we at Secretariat and in the PPN, we're working closely with Carlo County Council to kind of promote the Sustainable Development Goals and what they mean for our local community groups. So I'm going to let Jeanette kick off there, because we've already heard a lot about the PPN groups.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm Jeanette O'Brien, and I'm the Environmental Awareness Officer in Carlo County Council. So just to say to all of you throughout all the different counties, every one of you have somebody, some sort of a probably better version than me in your county, and I would advise you to get to your local authorities, contact your Environmental Awareness Officer and start getting them to help you get the word out. So look, as Anthony said earlier on, Carlo County Council were assigned, and delighted to be assigned, the role of SDG champions. So what did that mean for us as a local authority? It meant that we had to use all of our networks, and local authorities have lots of networks that were in every community, like all the rest of the champions, and try and get the word out and raise awareness. Now, we were very, very lucky, hugely lucky, that our PPN in Carlo is so proactive. We have a really good working relationship, and hi to Grania, I know she's online there, and Fiona, and they're a super team, and Molly. So like, probably because of the good working relationship we had, it made it a win-win situation for all. So Molly will probably tell you what your PPN has been doing, because they do fantastic work, like their daily actions and holding workshops, and they've had Molly and I talk about PPNs and the connectivity between the SDGs, and Joe and Anthony have been down. But I suppose for us in Carlo, what we have done to date is we have taken anybody that will listen to us. You know, we've gone from the very top decision makers at county managers associations, we've gone regionally through all the regional active groups, like the awareness officers in Merlin, and then we came to the local entity as well, so your PPNs. And this is my favourite part, because as we said, as Anthony said earlier on, some of the lingo can be very confusing, it's very bureaucratic. So what Anthony and I have been working on, and indeed Grania in the PPN, looking at a readable and understandable version, and seeing where we as community members fit in, what we have been doing and what we can do in terms of promoting our place in the PPN. And as Fiona said earlier on, there's lots of half-full or three-quarter-full buckets out there. So it is about recognising a lot of the work and having a look at the things that you're doing that are promoting PPNs. We're all in our community groups. We are already doing so much work. So kind of we worked everything here, like we've gone to our tiny towns groups, resident associations, youth reach, youth services, all the community voluntary groups. All of you have a community department in your local authorities as well. So both myself and Grania in the PPN have worked very closely with our community departments. So when they have done residence days, that they have a couple of maybe 100 people there, we have come in and we've talked about the SDGs and how they fit in our everyday lives. You know, I suppose working with the PPN from a local authority point of view around the promotion of the SDGs has been hugely beneficial, because the PPN, we can kind of send people towards the PPN, the proper structure for implementation of lots of things and public representation. And also we have access then to the huge diverse group that is affiliated to the PPNs. And it has been a really, really good working partnership in terms of local authorities and SDGs. you know, this is the first year of the pilot. I do think over the coming time, I was just chatting with Anthony this morning, because of the push that's coming from the communities up, because of some of us local authorities who are completely passionate about it, and because of the need for the time for change, it will become embedded in all of our policies and lead us all to a new way of thinking, because, you know, it is all about prosperity, planet and people. And that's what we're here for. So I'll go back to you, Mols.
Perfect. So Jeanette was really giving a really great overview there, and Annette from Wexford has kind of given a kind of breakthrough of what they were doing as well. So I suppose for us, if you're a PPN and you're looking about how you can promote the Sustainable Development Goals, it started for us last February, and we had a Sustainable Futures with the other Southeast PPNs who are probably here kind of in the mix here. Davy, you yourself hosted it, and we were introduced then to the Sustainable Development Goals, but that was only our environmental groups. And in Carlow PPN, we have over 400 community groups across all of the sectors, and they're already doing a lot of work, and it's for our sustainable future. So I suppose for us as a PPN, we at our next plenary we voted to support this SDGs, but it was more important for us to frame the Sustainable Development Goals within the work that our community groups were already doing. Because SDGs, that's just another acronym for a lot of these groups. I mean, you have LCPs, LDCs, all of these things that maybe don't really mean anything for people on the ground. And so while people are doing this work, like people who are working in soup kitchens don't necessarily know that they're working to fit objective 2 point whatever on the zero hunger, but they're doing the work. So it's allowing them to frame it, particularly because the Carlow County Council, what they're doing at the moment is they're linking all of their funding streams to the Sustainable Development Goals, and I believe they're one of the first county councils to do this. So last year, the local agenda funding, which is now called the Community Action Plan, I believe, it's all changing, they linked it within that. So then we would have had questions then from our local community groups, our tidy town groups, meaning, what are these Sustainable Development Goals? We've never heard of this. And then in which case we refer them back to all of our Facebook posts, our website, where we had daily practical actions. And as Jeanette was saying then, at our plenaries, we invite these people who do know, both from the top down perspective. We had Anthony and the head of the county council, Jeanette's boss there, but then also myself and Jeanette just went through really simply all of the Sustainable Development Goals and just gave one action that people were already taking or that they could take within their groups to be more rooted within the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you, Molly. That was perfect. So that was our examples from the field. You've been putting into the chat some examples from your own place, which is fantastic. And it's great to see the wealth and richness of the different experiences. We're going to take a pause before we go into the breakout rooms for a conversation of what we might do together. And I'd invite people to actually, it'd be good to hear other voices. Anyone that wants to come in and just share some insights from what we've heard so far, or some reflections on the topic of what we're looking at. How do the SDGs become a framework to help us plan our recovery, and of course, move into the transition that we were working on before this current emergency. I'd invite anyone who wants to come in to put an H in the chat or put your hand up, but there's 6 screens, so it's quite hard to see you all. It'd be lovely to hear some other voices. Katrina.
I was actually looking at Jackie from Louth, but I'm pointing at Jackie, but I wasn't, it looks like I'm waving.
Okay.
So maybe Jackie, you unmute yourself there.
Hi everybody. Yeah, listen, delighted to be here on this webinar because last year we took part in the Spark Change Challenge, which is a project or initiative that's run by Trinity College, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and
The wheel
is right, yeah. And the only reason why I got involved in it is because I'm part of a voluntary organisation, completely voluntary organisation, with little or no money, and we wanted to get involved. We wanted to get a cheap way into governance training. So we thought that this might be a good initiative. But when we got involved in it, it actually blew my mind away, because what we were doing was implementing the UN Sustainable Goal number 3, ensure healthy lives for all at all ages, health and well-being. And it really shone the light on us as an organisation, as people on the ground. While the UN have all of these SDGs up here, I could see then through the link of Ireland implementing the national plan, and how it was everybody's responsibility, let it be TDs, let it be politicians, let it be local county councils, and the community and voluntary sector. So it ended up then that we, through our own doing, we and as to the Monaghan PP, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Jackie, but if you could round it up or come to the point, that'd be brilliant. It's great.
Okay, sorry. So we then made submissions to the Healthy Ireland consultation and to the Monaghan PPN and to the Louth County Council. So it's working from very much a bottom up, but it also needs to be the social end of it, the social environment needs to be included, and as much as the environmental, the physical environmental projects.
Exactly. And that's what the framework gives us, I think, that holistic viewpoint where the environment, the social, the economic, the equality, the justice aspects are in one framework. So thanks for stressing that. Any other voices before we go to the breakout? Richard Webb? Richard, have you froze? You can come in, unmute yourself.
Sorry, if I might be Eugene Conlon here in County Louth. I think Molly's point about organisations already in existence that actually, whose actions are contributing to the SDGs and they may not be aware of them. I think that is such a relevant point.
Yes, thanks, Eugene. It's one that we found when we went around the country doing these SDG workshops, that people don't realize the work they're already doing could be framed or have some leverage for extra support around achieving the goals or targets in the goals. So more awareness is definitely needed of that, and more awareness of the holistic nature, that we can't address one goal out on its own. Is trying to see the relationships between them. Richard Webb, you're trying to come in. Do you?
Oh, hi, David. Hi, everyone. Things have been in a bit of an abeyance in Wicklow in terms of the putting SDGs on the ground. We have Wicklow Environmental Network. In fact, we have about 3 environmental networks in the different parts of the county, and up to about a month ago, everyone was working on particular programs and linking up. This brings together a whole range of different organizations, but as I say, a lot of things are in abeyance at the moment. One thing we are doing actually, so I'm in the PPN, the LCDC, and through that we're working on a Wicklow food strategy, which obviously fits into one of the SDGs. And this is to identify the small-scale food producers within the county and see what their needs are, training, marketing, and this kind of thing. One of the subgroups we're looking at there is this whole issue of food poverty. And in fact, got another online discussion on Friday. We have a very good coordinator from the north of Ireland who's working with us. A very complex subject, no easy answers, but we hope we'll have something together shortly on that issue, Davey. That's it.
Thanks, Richard. I think there's a point there that's worth stressing, is that food, or issues like food, energy, may be a way in to shorten vulnerabilities around long supply chains, to a circular economy, more jobs and livelihoods, better health and well-being, so that we can see you're addressing a food issue that might be seen as end hunger, but you can see you're tapping into all sorts of things around waste, emissions, healthier society. So thanks for that. And maybe time for one more, if there's anyone burning to come in with an observation, a reflection on what we've heard. Either an H or put your hand up, but there's 6 screens for me and Katrina to run through. So there we have Dermot. Come on in, Dermot.
Thanks very much, Davey. Very quickly, I just want to kind of give a shout out to the potential, well, it's not even potential anymore. I think the energy and enthusiasm of young people and where they fit into the scheme of things. I'm I wear lots of different hats. So I'm an elected rep, but I also work for the National Youth Council, and I've developed dev ed resources, and I get to spend time with young people, more so than counsellors, which is probably a good thing. But I think when we talk about bottom up and top down and sideways as well, I think that young people have no fear about having a vision for the future that is optimistic, that has smidgens of hope in there. But I think the quicker we support them to understand how the SDGs are the framework or the lens with which they see a hopeful and positive future, I think they become a huge strength and an asset to this agenda.
Thanks for bringing that in, Dermot. And Mary Deary, sorry, I missed your H there, your hand up. Mary, the floor is yours.
My role is the age-friendly county coordinator in County Louth and the Healthy Ireland coordinator, and I'm also responsible for the monitoring of the implementation of the LECP. So I definitely see quite a convergence of the goals and the actions, and certainly see the LECP in Louth reflecting the SDGs. Something I really need to raise here is it's the opposite end of the continuum that Dermot has spoken about, and that's the ageing demographic. And especially in these current days, I mean, the conversation is quite substantially around older people. The use of technology in terms of supporting telecare and telehealth, housing to support lifetime adaptability standards so that people can remain in their homes for as long as possible. There are so many things that cut across all of the SDGs in relation to the ageing demographic that I think it's a very important element of the agenda as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. That's a very valid point and a good connection to be making. Thanks for those insights. Were really good. There's no more H's up. We have less than half an hour to go to be finished this seminar, so I suggest that we keep going. Our next piece is actually a little breakout room. If you've not done a breakout room, don't panic. We're going to be sent automatically. You might have to click a switch to take you to an allocated room. We're doing it randomly. Sometimes when we go to rooms, we might be in sector specific or geographic specific, but we're going to just stay with random. Our opportunity is to look at the question that I'm just posting in the chat, and I'll put up on my screen. We're looking just to have a conversation around a potential collective action that we could take at the local or county level that would ensure the SDG framework as at the core of our roadmap to the recovery. So it's a conversation. As you know, in a conversation, it's as important to listen. If we're in a group of 10, you should be listening as 9 times as much as you're speaking. And maybe when we get into the rooms, do a very quick introduction. So just maybe your names and who you are, just so you get a sense of who's in your room. There should be about 8 people in each room, and Katrina's about to hit that button to take you to the room. So just again, I'll read the question out again. Identify a collective action or discuss, maybe come up with one that we can share in the plenary, a collective action we could take at the local or county level to ensure the SDG framework it can be at the core or heart of our plans for recovery. So I'm going to, are you hitting the button, Katrina? Are you sending them?
Yeah, I am opening rooms. So I think everyone has been invited to join your room. So if you, okay, we're starting to go.
So just, Welcome back, everyone, to the plenary and the last 15 minutes or 10 minutes of our dynamic virtual Zoom session today. So it'll take a little second for everyone to go back. Hopefully that experience was a good one for you. Sometimes in these Zoom rooms, people have left themselves on, and so there's empty people. You might have found that. We did in our room. Sometimes the technology fails us, our poor broadband fails us. So hopefully you had some good conversations. I'd like to invite you to put any reflections or insights from the conversation either in the chat, or ideally, if a few people might actually speak, something from their breakout, a reflection, or even the process, or where they got to. Did we come up with any ideas for working together moving forward? Again, H in the thing, but Helen, you've got your hand up and I can see you because I'm on that screen. On you go, Helen.
Killer. Okay. Loving what I'm learning with the Zoom, guys. Thanks very much for this opportunity to learn the breakout rooms best. We came up with 3 actions. One is that the PPNs share what they do and linking their visions for community wellbeing to the SDGs and the whole process that is. The second thing is we're thinking that each local authority should have someone who well understands the SDGs and is responsible for ensuring that the framework is covered across the local authority. And then the last is the UN budget to do an advertising campaign about the SDGs.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll keep going. Mary Deary, you're next with your hand up if you'd like to come in and share any insights from your breakout. And then Heidi, you'll be next.
Can I just interrupt and invite people to also type into the chat so that we can, in case we miss any of this, that it will all be captured in the chat as well for the report.
Thank you. So Mary, then Heidi.
Okay, so basically we looked at what Age Friendly did to incorporate the whole Age Friendly message through the county development plans and the LECP. So Age Friendly Ireland developed a submission that every county council could send into the public consultation period into the local authority in relation to getting age friendly into the county development plan and the LECP. So if we had a submission on the sustainable development goals, each county, and every time these plans are being renewed, then there could be consistency across the country. And once they get into those plans, they will grow legs and go. And I also think the model of the Healthy Ireland Fund, for instance, is a good one, because everything that we do under the Healthy Ireland Fund in local authority level has to have the Healthy Ireland brand all over it. So local authorities are using Healthy Ireland brand now, just consistently across the board because we're funded to do actions. Likewise, if each local authority had a fund in relation to, it doesn't have to be a big fund, but it means that the logo and the brands get down to a very local level.
Great, thanks Mary. Okay, Heidi from Fingal.
We were just getting stuck into it, but anyway, we kind of vaguely tipped off 2 issues that would love to tease out more at another time. One, that the goals could be used for different groups to focus on one goal. I'm sure it's not a new idea, but it's something that I'd like to see introduced. We're not doing it in Fingal, really. And to steer the groups towards accomplishing 1 or 2 things per year and have a menu of things that they can pick when the goals come through. And the other is really, as the new documents are written over the next little while, that the SDGs are highlighted more, they're flagged more in the document, so that as the actions are written out, there's another column that is saying which goal this is ticking. So even though the actions are being done and the new development plans and stuff are being written, that it's very clear that they're touching off different goals, which of course will also give clarity about what goals are not being touched off at all. So what's absent from a development. So that was it. But very lovely chat, and I'd love another half an hour with those people. Would be great.
Yes, we're very constrained with time and technology, but thanks Heidi. Michelle Casserly, and if anyone else wants to put their hand up to share some experience or maybe some actions? So.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, no, we had a great discussion in breakout room 3 as well. I hope I can distill it down slightly. So we discussed the example of the PPNs adopting the SDGs and bringing in the county council and sort of working together, and the importance of collaboration and partnership to build on what's there already and to build on the networks to take advantage of perhaps the lads in Department of Climate Action and the environment or environmental networks, and build on that partnership. Also to bring the SDGs down to the community level, that many community voluntary organisations are already doing it but don't actually realise that they are, and the kind of rewards that you can see when you can link your projects to maybe a county or national or even a European or UN level and see how you're linking into the SDGs. We also spoke about how policies they can be long-winded, so there's a need for better simple English, better clarity, and that actions need to be specific with timelines, and the importance of it coming from the top down and the bottom up, and to meet that place in the middle. And and to just remember to look at the SDGs as not just an environmental issue, that it kind of speaks to the whole of society. And that was it, I hope.
Thanks, Michelle. That was very useful. There is some coming in the chat. So firmly believe, Karen from the Meath PPN, firmly believe the goals need an officer, probably linked to the Climate Change Action Plan. Good point, as it's cross-departmental. Another very good point. Carlo, Jeanette O'Brien says it might be wise to concentrate on one goal only. The goals are so interconnected that it might be wise to take a thematic approach. Yeah, that'd be similar when I was talking with someone from Wicklow there about maybe using an issue like food to go in, but then you can show the different goals and targets you're hitting by focusing on that one domain. And yesterday we had an observation, some people working on energy, and just showing that we really need to show, if we choose one goal, that it's hitting a number of goals in different sectors, environmental, social, economic, or helping alleviate mental health or equality. So it's good to start someplace, but let's try and be as holistic as we can. Any other voices that actually want to speak out or things? And please, as Katrina's saying, in our last few minutes here, if we can capture anything that might be of value from those conversations. Obviously, the conversations in themselves have value. And if we were really going to work on something, as Heidi was saying, you'd want more space because we're just getting into it when we're pulled back out again. Kildare to everyone, hand up. Kildare, that's all it comes out, so I can't tell your name.
Hi, David, it's Deirdre here. We're very fortunate on the Curragh that we have the UN SDGs being planned, so all the UN champions come to Kildare. So would it be possible to have some grassroots at those meetings? So the findings, we can have one pilot county that can replicate how the SDGs are being implemented in terms of financing the just recovery, just transition, and actually get those findings in a local pilot.
Yeah, there's something there, Deirdre. Thanks for that. And good to see you here. If you share the next time for good practice, you might come in late. It's good if our names say our place and our name. So we could only see you as Kildare and not as Deirdre. Thank you. Okay, we've only a few minutes left. There's no one else who wants to come in. We are going to share the insights from today's seminar, but also yesterday's and tomorrow's in a report that will capture some of the reflections. It will have the links to the presentations that have been shared as well, which will be interesting for us. So I suppose at this last stage now, we're really coming to a close. We don't want this to be the end of something. Obviously, this has been a great experience, I think, from my perspective, and I think we need more of these opportunities to link, connect from different levels and in this common framework. So I think if we could, in some ways, look at how we might continue in the spirit of this seminar, and really looking at, we have an opportunity now where people are forced local, they're staying local, they're much more aware of their local resources and potentially the local vulnerabilities from what is now seen as a very long supply chain that leaves us in a precarious state if anything goes wrong with that supply chain. We need circular economies, we need local economies, we need a just transition, we need a just recovery. There is so much we need to do that the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda gives us a holistic framework to look at that, so we're moving into true sustainability and not just environmental measures or separated and isolated social, community or economic measures. In some ways, the Sustainable Development Goals should be at the forefront of all our plans, our climate action plans, our development plans, and it's not. Again, these things are in silos. So I'm going to pass back to Katrina, but I just really want to thank everyone for joining this and participating. And hopefully we can do more when we can get some more engagement here. And just thanks to all the contributors and speakers as well. It was a lovely experience. I'm handing back to Katrina now for the last words.
Thanks, Davy. And I'm not going to say too much more because I already feel like there has been so much shared in the last hour and a half. And I definitely am looking forward to going back through the chats and pulling out some of those ideas that were shared. And as Davy said, we will share this with you. We will also share some other specific resources that we have with actions in the email for the local authority, local county level. One thing I would just say is, certainly for me, I'm only getting used to using this Zoom in this kind of setup, and I'm really open to feedback from anyone. If you had any difficulties, if anything could have been done differently to facilitate the process and make it easier for you to participate, please let us know. And I just really like to say thank you so much for taking an hour and a half out of a beautiful afternoon. And hopefully we will continue some of these conversations and keep some of the connections up as we move forward. So thank you everybody so much. And I'm going to give you jazz hands. And hopefully you can take your mics off now and say goodbye.
See ya. Take care.
Bye,
folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye now.
Thanks, Davey.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye. See you soon.